Hi, everyone. I am Hannah Wright, the RTI specialist, which is really just a fancy word for other duties as assigned. No, I do a lot with just interventions, academic and behavior in our school.
I'm Tiffany Worland. I'm the principal at Monroe, and work closely with Hannah on making sure that our tier 2 and 3 systems are in place to help all of our kids.
All right, and we're just gonna today talk about 2.13. I think that says 3, but I'm pretty sure it's 13, which is using student performance data to support effective check in, check out implementation. And just to be super transparent, this is something like that we have worked really hard on in the last 2 years and have had a lot of growing pains with. So just know that going in that we're all still learning, right? Oh, you would think. There we go.
So, just a little bit about our school so you know who our kids are on paper and also, can kind of relate if you're in a similar situation. Our school goes kindergarten through fourth grade, which is a little unusual, but fourth grade is the oldest in our school. We have currently 343 students with our demographics broken up as you see on this slide. It, Relatively speaking, for our area, we're a pretty diverse school, but obviously I know that's off subjective to wherever you are from too. We have been implementing PBIS officially since 2016, and currently we're doing that at all 3 tiers. And then we are a suburban area outside of St. Louis, just for context of where we are.
Good old St. Charles, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
This is just the rubric, you know, how you score yourself on the TIFI. So this is specifically for 2.13 decision making with student performance data. And where we use the data sources for this is our student progress data, which we will show you in just a little bit. We have lots of intervention tracking tools. All of our kids on check in, check out use a daily DPR, daily report progress, daily progress report. And then we have little family communication slips that we start using those very regularly. And then as the intervention happens, we start to fade those. So this is just talking about, oh, that's so much better. Talking about the value of check in, check out and what it has done for us when we are looking at our students. So we have had many years of doing, I guess 10, right? And really the last 2 years, we have done a much better job at just focusing check in, check out during academic times. We were using check in, check out through the whole day. So they would take it everywhere with them all of the time. And so, really, right now, what that looks like is teachers are picking 4 core academic times during the day where they are rating students and giving direct feedback after each of those academic blocks of time. And that is definitely our main tier 2 intervention that we use the most. We also use social skills groups. Generally, we see a lot of overlap with those kids. And it has really served as like a check and balance for us in the sense that, you know, teaching is emotional, right? So if you're feeling like something is happening all of the time, really us being able to look at all of the things we're about to show you, like the data that we take, is a really good check and balance. If what you're saying about a student isn't matching the data, that's either an implementation issue or it's really just not as bad. And so that has been a good wake up call for all of us, and especially for us to start conversations with the classroom teacher like, are you actually scoring them accurately? Or are you just feeling like all of the hard moments are happening all the time and they're not? Something that has also happened with us really doing a great job of looking at data for check in, check out is that we're actually graduating students from interventions. That really was not happening prior to last year. We were kind of using check in, check out as a babysitter, if I'm being completely honest with you. And that's not bad necessarily in the sense that we learned a lot from doing it that way of what wasn't working. But the way we're doing it now has actually empowered our students, and showing them that like I can learn the skills. I can do this on my own. This visual does help me. And some of our kids just have tried to graduate off of it, but then have needed that visual. So we've adapted some things. But just knowing for our kids that like you can do this on your own has been very impactful.
And these are things that we value now, but probably wouldn't have even mentioned 2 years ago. We got to a place, like Hannah said, where check in, check out was kind of a crutch for students. They were starting the school year being like, can I get that clipboard back? And we just ended up going. I mean, we did all the training, we did the tier 2 training, we thought we were doing the right things, and eventually we found ourselves in this place where we're like, this is not actually helping our kids. Interventions are not supposed to be forever. How do we get to a place where we're fading the intervention, and how do we get to a place where the kids see this as something that they should be proud to get off of and not wanting to stay in forever? And then how do we use data to help us make those decisions? And so we always will offer this shameless plug because we got connected with Mizzou and their PBIS team, and specifically Lisa Powers. And so if you're finding yourself in a place where you're like, okay, we're going through the motions, but is it really helping our kids? Reaching out to them, or, you know, any other researchers that can kind of help you refresh your process, because we do know things get stale over time, is highly recommended by us.
Yeah.
So we obviously needed to make a plan for how to collect data, because you can't use data to help you make decisions if you don't have it. So deciding what we wanted to track and checking our own fidelity. Like Hannah said, we decided to only track our academic times, and we have made some exceptions for that. We've had a couple kids who all of their office referrals are from specials time. And so we know that like when they're with their safe person in their classroom that they see all day long, they're okay. But then when they go to specials, that's a hard thing. And so knowing that like not all kids are the same and there could be some exceptions, but like checking that we are, you know, doing things with fidelity and making them consistent so that we're not comparing apples to oranges was important for us. How often do we want to review? Time is always the biggest enemy in teaching. And so we found ourselves being in a place where we really did want to review our data, but there's always like new kids to be added. There's always some meeting or assembly that takes up our time. And so making sure that we were consistently putting meetings on the calendar for at least every 6 weeks to review the data was a priority of ours. And then what decisions are we going to make based on that data, knowing that ahead of time, because data can also feel emotional. And knowing like, no, we're looking at this through a professional lens to decide, should students self-monitor on check-in, check-out, and when should that start? How do we know that they're ready for that? Should we continue their check-in, check-out plan, or should we adapt their check-in, check-out plan? And so we would start kids on check-in, check-out, get their baseline score, set a goal, collect the data for how they were doing. And then if they were meeting their goal consistently, maybe we increase the goal to make it a little more rigorous. Or if they were not meeting their goal consistently, why were they not? Do we need to intensify the times that we're checking in even more often? Do we need to differentiate, like for the student I mentioned who did need to check in, check out during those specials times? Do we need to look at what their goals are and change those? It was all completely based on, you know, what the kid needed.
The adapting one is the one where we have to check ourselves as a team that reviews this the most, because if you're adapting for every kid and you're, you know, at some point you're kind of venturing into the tier 3 world. So we are really careful of who we're adapting check in, check out for and why. Like honestly, the trauma piece comes in a little bit here. Just I'm thinking of a kid that we have adapted it for, and one of the reasons he struggles in specials is his ability to maintain lots of adult relationships. So him have like he doesn't really need check in check out for his classroom because he has a strong relationship. He more needs it for his specialty areas, teachers. So adapting, just being aware of like we are not adapting this for every kid. I think ours is only at like 2 or 3 kids that we've really adapted it for, because I think that's the one that will cause you to spiral the most if you don't check each other in that area.
We also have to be careful to be realistic about what the kids' goals are.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes, when we get to the point that a student's goal is 80% and they are meeting that, sometimes we get a little nervous to self-monitor or to graduate them from the intervention because 80% still means that 20% of the time you may be struggling. But also remembering that like even we would probably only get like 80 to 90% of our day, that nobody can be perfect all of the time.
I would for sure get 80.
Right. And if
maybe
you,
less.
yeah, if you are at 80% or more every day, you probably don't really need an intervention. You're probably just human.
Mm-hmm. So this is a little bit of the impact that the data collection piece and really focusing on looking at it often has made for us, is that we are making decisions based off of data and not feelings or fear, honestly, either. And that our at a glance data, which you'll see in just a minute, is really able to show us like what in this quick moment, if I'm looking at the main thing of it all, is actually happening. Are we graduating kids? Is it actually impacting majority of our kids? So this is our impact just from last year and where we're at currently this year. Last year, again, we worked really closely with Lisa Powers, and we had 22 students participating in check in, check out intervention. We graduated 21 of those students. And 2 of those students, which actually was a kindergarten and a 4th grader that were brother and sister, so it was kind of adorable, that they both earned our big award at big 3 for the 3rd trimester. So like they were a kid who was on an intervention that was helping them learn how to meet our behavior expectations, and then did so well on that they earned the best award possible at our school. So that was a huge celebration for us. And then we only had 1 student this year who we screened back into check in, check out at the beginning of this school year. And he actually walked in when I was doing the check in, check out training with the kids. And he was like, yeah, I didn't graduate last year. So here I am, but yeah, I know how to do all of this. And he graduated within like 3 weeks and has maintained those skills. And he actually helps me when I train new kids for check in, check out, and does help check out on Fridays when they get their prizes. So it's actually been really cool to see that process and give him that empowerment piece and leadership piece. This year, we have had 33 students screen in. Not actually, they haven't all been screened in from our screener. Some of them have been nominated, actually. But 33 students are participating or have participated. 24 of those have graduated so far. 2 students have what we're saying come back for a modified check in, check out for specials. I think they were off of it for, I think we did like a month. It was almost like a month or six-ish weeks of that. Where it was just struggle. And so we brought them back to do it for specials, and then they kind of reflect on their day as a whole. And then one of those students earned the Big 3 award for trimester 2 this year. So we'll see what trimester 3 brings. And this is the at a glance that we were talking about. So this is what our year has looked like so far. October is really when we started check in, check out interventions. And that simply is because where we start towards the end of August. And then we do our screener about 6 weeks. So that ended up being closer to the end of September. So getting things off the ground and getting kids trained. I think like the first week of October, we were in it. And so these are just some of our numbers. Our social skills groups, why you see like bigger blocks of time is because those are more, we run them for 6 weeks, but they're not doing it every day. We meet with them once a week for 6 weeks and sometimes a little bit longer, just depending on how everything falls. But I'm going to show you our, this is like our main database for check-in, check-out. So across the bottom, you'll see that we have check-in, check-out kids from the beginning of the year screener. And just so you know, this is like our live current data, but all names are like blacked out. So if they are highlighted all the way green, that means they've graduated. So from the beginning of the year, we still have, I think like 4 or 5 kids, it looks like, that are on check-in, check-out still. And then this is our middle of the year data. And then we also do the similar data taking for social skills. And then we also have a tab. I don't actually know where it is, but it's teacher nomination tab. So maybe this isn't the most current copy, I guess. But it's pretty dang close to where we are right now. And that is the tab for like those kids who have been nominated just through like a tier 2 nomination form and not necessarily a screener. So just some of the things we're looking at when we look at this is like when we started the intervention, we use the Sabres as our screener. So this is their beginning of the year score, their middle of the year score, and then we'll go in and put their end of the year score. So it's probably more helpful to look at some that are all the way green and some aren't. The goal, so you can see that this friend right here started at 70%. And then at the next decision time that we met, we moved them to 80. And this was their current average, 4-week average that we pull. We use Swiss, which is amazing. And then these are some of the big things where we spend most of our time looking at them, is the goal impact. So like if we're doing an intervention, we as a building have decided the things that we want to see impacted are attendance, minors and majors. So that just means that attendance, are they here? Because hopefully, they have great attendance, but if they don't, hopefully check-in, check-out is providing some element of attention that is making them have a good relationship that want them to be here at school. And then our minors, so this is just minors. So when it says 0 to 4, that is like, how is this kid started at 0 when we started the intervention. And then there were 4 that they got. So this one, the impact isn't really
That's why they're
great.
continuing.
Correct. But this one, you can see their office referrals, they were at 4, then they were at 0. Our next data check, they were at 0. They, have spiked to 2 and 4. So, we don't have like a perfect way of writing it out, but that's how our brains have been working, is like,
since the last time
we want to know, right?
How many have they had?
And that's always, and we put it up here just to remind ourselves of that as assessed from last data check, because there were times where, it's like, well, they have this many overall. And I'm like, well, I'm not really concerned how many they have overall. I'm more concerned about what does the data look like from the time that the intervention was implemented. And then, sometimes we're digging in even deeper to ones like these that are going up and down of like, what's the time of the year, what's going on in their life, like those kinds of things. And then you'll see over here, this is where we just put in like, did we make the decision? Are they graduating? Are they continuing? Are they self-monitoring? Did we have to adapt it a little? And then any notes. So just, this is our way, and we do the same thing for the middle of the year kids that come in. And then social skills is the same thing as well. The social skills one, this is definitely an area of growth for us, that we're still figuring out how often can we be looking at that data. But okay, now let me see if I can figure out how to get back to where I was. There we go. Oops, is that the next slide? Yep. Okay.
So like Hannah said, like social skills and making sure that is running just as smoothly as check-in, check-out is an area of growth for us. while we've been working on this, we've constantly been thinking about like, what are our next steps? How do we grow? How do we continue to get better on our journey, especially through the tier 2 processes? And so we heard somebody say at a presentation that we went to, you're either getting started or getting better. And so we try to use that for ourselves, and wanted to offer some ideas for you guys too. So you're in one of these camps, right? You're either here because you're getting started on tier 2 interventions, or you're getting better at them. So if you're getting started, don't wait for Monday. Don't wait for the next break, especially this time of year. You might even think, let's put that on next year's list. Just get started now, because, this is the only year that kid that's been driving you crazy is going to be in second grade, right? And so why wait to make it a third grade problem? We want to help kids as fast as we possibly can. And this is something we've really improved over the last few years. We had like a long list of kids who we were waiting to meet on. And we got to the point where it was like, okay, we can pencil them in for the tier 2 meeting next month. And it's like, okay, so we're just going to let them struggle for 4 more weeks before that time works for us. Like, no, we need to start meeting right away. So just don't put it off for the next convenient time. Just get started. I promise it'll be worth it. Decide what impact you're looking for. For example, attendance, minors, ODRs. What is it that you want to see be impacted by the interventions, and decide that before you get started, because otherwise there will be a lot of feelings. Do we feel like this is working? Do we feel better? Do we feel less annoyed than we did before? When really that data is going to tell you, is it working? And then make sure that you have a way to organize all of that. So we're happy to share the spreadsheets that we have. Those have worked well for us. If you are like, their spreadsheet is terrible, and make one you think is better, share it with us.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be better.
That spreadsheet has changed mid-year. There was, it's always okay to make changes. That's what we have to always remind ourselves of.
And to remind ourselves that like the way our brains work is not the way that our whole team's brains work. And so making sure that we're organized, not only for us, but for the people who are doing this work. Hannah is a check-in, check-out facilitator at our school, but so are 3 other people. And so making sure that all 4 of them, understand the way that the data is collected and how to read it and make decisions from there is important. So that's if you're getting started. If you are like us and you have gotten started, but you're looking for ways to get better throughout your process, just make sure that you're consistently looking at the data. It's one thing to do all of these processes, but another to check and make sure that it's going well. Is it working? Is it not working? And to do that every 4 to 6 weeks is highly recommended, because otherwise you might be wasting a lot of time for yourself.
And that also creates buy-in among your staff, right? So if they know that someone is looking at the data that they're spending the time to take, they're going to be more invested in it, whether they realize it or not. That's just the truth of it. If I don't feel like anyone is actually ever looking at the data that I'm taking, I'm just not going to be that aware of remembering to do it.
This is the second bullet point, is something that we are currently working on. How can we better share the data with the classroom teachers outside of meetings? So we know that we all have so many meetings on our schedules and on our agendas. And so, but also just sending this in an email doesn't feel like it's the personalization that it deserves either. So our team meets every 4 to 6 weeks to review our data and to make decisions. But obviously the classroom teachers are doing the most work with this. And so making sure that they also get a chance to look at that data and they are included in that decision-making process without creating more meetings for them. And then, of course, how can we apply what is working to other interventions? So like Hannah mentioned, we also have social skills in addition to check-in, check-out, but it's not as fine-tuned as we have made check-in, check-out over the last few years. And so how can we apply what we've been doing to that and to any other things that we try to, because we know this has worked well for us. We have about 5 minutes left. So if you guys have any questions, we'd love to answer those.